Welcome back to Charly.
Welcome back to Charly. I mean, we should probably address the elephant in the room. Tana's Technicolor Dreamcoat. Give us a twirl.
Yeah, you know.
Give us an on-bed twirl.
I think dressing up is an important part of, experiencing different facets of your personality. And this facet of my personality is a wizard who is very good at transmitting anxiety into creative energy.
Oh, yeah.
People say, running is like drugs for me, or drugs is like drugs for me. Mm-hmm. This is like drugs for me. And the good kind, the psychedelic kind, the kind that make you think and process and work your life out. Other times, it's like pure meth.
If you're enjoying this series, please consider supporting us on Patreon. It would mean so much. I really want to be making more videos more of the time, and Patreon helps us do that. And I don't want to be needy, but it's a really good time for you guys to support us on Patreon.
Never a better time than now.
Honestly. So thank you to everyone who is supporting us. And to those of you who don't and are just watching our videos, thank you too. Smash the like button. I'm going to start reading Charly chapter 11. Serotonin is low today. Please don't let Jack plunge it any lower. That's my biggest fear.
I'm worried.
Please don't do a racism.
Everyone say a little prayer right now.
Okay. All right. The labour room of a hospital is no place for a man to be because it makes him feel guilty for putting a woman through all that moaning and crying.
Wow, we are off to a great start.
Amazing. He didn't feel guilty when he put her through homesteading against her will.
Yeah, when he was asking for all the credit at the doctor's office, he wasn't thinking about how he was going to have to endure her shouting about it.
Yeah, seriously. He's the most self-centered character in the world.
I think that I've ever read.
For a first-person but narration where he's the protagonist, it's still just unreal how self-absorbed he is. And it's written by a man, so presumably it's you write what you know. Oh, Charly grimaced with pain.
Owie, owie, owie.
Drops of perspiration dotted her forehead. Now, you're not relaxing like I told you to, the nurse advised. How on earth is she supposed to relax? I asked.
I'm her husband. I never let her relax.
She knows how. The doctor should have given her a pamphlet to read. We had been there since 1 o'clock that morning, and it was now 3.
She should know how to relax. She's read a pamphlet. First time giving childbirth. You got a pamphlet. Why is this so hard for you?
Let's not roast the pamphlet, because I think the pamphlet is astronomically more supportive than Sam.
No doubt.
The pamphlet's all she's got right now. The metric system has arrived in childbirth, where dilation is measured in centimetres. 4.5 centimetres, the nurse announced as she measured. Is that good? I asked. It's getting there, she said routinely, leaving us alone again, partitioned off by curtains from the other suffering women.
I love when Jack just drops little hints of just here's some wisdom for you. You may not know this, but they actually measure it in centimeters.
The metric system when women give birth, which is crazy because this is the United States of God bless America. But...
Interesting. Thank you for the info.
A girl moaned sharply in the bed next to where we were. Just But there was nobody by her side to comfort her. Oh, I bet she's a fucking unwed mother.
Oh, God.
I peeked through the curtains separating the beds. She didn't look to be more than 18, and she was obviously scared. Is he going to do a white knight thing right now?
I hope not. He's like, would you like
Even
to be a
though he
sister wife?
probably voted for laws that don't let her get an abortion. Charly groaned again and squeezed my hand in pain. I've been thinking, Sam. I'm not sure if I want to go through with this or not. I wiped her forehead. I think it's a little late now. Could I have a priesthood blessing? She asked. I had just started to put my hand on Charly's head when the nurse came back. What are you doing? She asked.
Oh, just a little magic ritual where I put my hands on her head and transfer the power of God into her. I speak on behalf of him. It's just a weird channeling thing that I do.
I'm going to say a prayer with my wife. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll leave you alone. I put my hands on her head and gave her a priesthood blessing. When I was finished, again, never gives details on what was said. Yeah, when I was finished, I kissed her lightly and told her how much I loved her.
I wonder if it's an act of profanity to write out a fake blessing. Is he just not throwing his pearls before these swine?
Because then you'll show that the blessing doesn't come from God because it's the exact fucking same when you write it. Hey, the girl next to us called. Could you say a prayer for me too? Go ahead, Sam. I'll be all right. I walked over to the girl's bed. My wife and I are Mormons, and the prayer I offered is what Mormons do. Is that all right?
It just hurts me to hear that slur.
I know,
if you could just censor it.
Such a win for Satan, just like bam, bam, bam.
Every time. I wish Jack had been more sensitive about that.
I'll censor the word from now on. It sounded so nice, the girl said. Then I gave her a priesthood blessing. Thank you, she said when it was over. It was nice. Now you'd better get back to your wife. Before long, all sorts of commotion broke out. The next time the nurse came around to check Charly, she realized she was in the last stages of labor. Suddenly, the nurse was paging the doctor and Charly was being wheeled into the delivery room. They let me put on a robe and go in to watch. The room was all lights and a table with stirrups and electronics. One more push, the doctor encouraged. And then it was out. The ugliest baby boy I had ever seen. That's a little insight into Sam's relationship with his inner child. Then it was out. The ugliest baby I'd ever seen. Someone needs to write a letter to themselves as a baby.
Yeah, might do them some good.
Nobody had warned me, this is in parentheses, nobody had warned me what it would look like before it was washed up.
A lizard.
Or did you not go to the classes, the birthing classes?
Didn't read the pamphlet.
No place for a man to be inside the walls of a pamphlet.
Just so you know, you're not giving birth to the Antichrist. It's just a very ugly baby.
How is he? Charly asked as she was being wheeled away. Fine, I answered evasively. He seems very prepared for family life. The nurse told me he looks just like you.
That's tragic.
We called him, I just don't understand how you couldn't summon, like, he's perfect. Like, this healthy baby boy has come out, I assume. And you're just like, evading the question of how does my son look? No, like, I was overcome with emotion of this new human life I brought into the world. It's just it's kind of icky, there's blood on it.
They asked how the baby looked? I thought they asked him how he was.
Charly asked Sam, how is he? And then Sam says, fine, I answered evasively. Like, what's with, it's just weird.
Yeah.
Anyway, we called him Adam, and he was born at 4:15 in the morning. By the time I had phoned our parents from the hospital, it was 5 o'clock. I drove home and went to bed until noon.
I'm sorry. They named him Adam?
Yeah.
Do you think this is some, like, 5D chess allegory of the creation?
Yes.
Is Sam Elohim, an avatar of Elohim? Is Charly Heavenly Mother?
Well, no, because I don't think that if she was, that she would be written about. Do you know what I mean?
Like,
that's a bit sketch.
That's right.
Because it's like, she's sacred. When I visited Charly in the hospital, is it weird to not, like, stay with your wife after she's given birth? Like, don't most men these days, like, nap in the hospital with her? I don't know. I don't want to, like, be rude.
I have no idea what most men do at all during the day.
The wee hours
when their wife
morning.
is giving birth.
Anyway, if you have had a baby, let us know. Did your husband immediately leave after the birth and go home to nap in your cozy bed? I don't know.
I wish Jack
Not
would
judging
have
either way, I'm just curious.
given us authoritative. Most men do this.
When I visited Charly in the hospital that afternoon, she looked rested and happy and sore.
I just gotta walk off my disappointment at having the ugliest baby I've ever seen who looks identical to me.
While I was there, they brought Adam into us. He looked so small, I was afraid I'd drop him, but she made sure I held him. Say something to your son, she beamed. Hello, this is your father speaking, I said. It's literally like Queen Elizabeth when she shakes Prince William's hand after a I know,
I keep really feeling the royal family.
Listen to the You're Wrong About podcast, just generally. It's the single best podcast in the world as far as I'm concerned. Hilarious, informative, amazing. But specifically listen to the Princess Diana series. But it is kind of like an iconic moment in like royal history when the Queen had been off on this like royal trip for like a month and then she comes back to her 5-year-old son and like formally shakes his hand. Like it's just a scary insight into the royals. Anyway, so he said, hello, this is your father speaking. How warm, how tender, Charly teased. Charly's roommate was the girl who had asked for a blessing. Her name was Sherry Wilson and her husband was a rodeo clown. The rodeo had played in Rapid City a few days before.
Again, here's just a person who's being named more than Charly's mother.
More than Charly's mother.
One more time.
Yep. Sherry had gone on the tour with him because she wasn't due for another 4 weeks, but unexpectedly the pains had begun, and he had left her in their motel until he could get back from his next engagement in Montana. Okay. So, like, are we supposed to be like, he's a bad guy then? Like, he left her... When she was in pain from pregnancy, he left her to go on this rodeo tour? It's a bit weird. Why don't you come and stay with us until he gets back? Charly offered.
The rodeo cannot wait.
The rodeo waits for no man. One saw a woman and a baby is one thing, but two in a house is unbelievable. For the next day or two after Charlie was released from the hospital, I began to feel that my only functions in life were to run to the store for disposable diapers, to serve meals to two straggly-haired, house-coated ladies who talk non-stop about their pains and their babies, and to listen to two healthy crying babies.
Sam is honestly the worst dad. He was totally unprepared for this. Of course, that's no surprise to anyone who's read a page of this book.
I need to point out immediately that him saying, I began to feel that my only functions in life were to run to the store for disposable diapers. Welcome to being a Mormon fucking woman. Your only function in life is to do that forever
all
and ever.
The time.
And you didn't push a baby out your body.
He's like, but I have a penis.
He has no empathy for the fact that these women are sore because they just, like, delivered a child. Like, everything is so... through the lens of, like, oh, it's me, woe is me.
There's didn't think for a minute, like, oh yeah, I'll probably be doing a lot of that and, like, kind of, like, emotionally regulate and anticipate.
Dude, she just had your fucking baby.
Oh, fine, I'll go to the store and get diapers for you if that's all I am is a diaper buyer.
Just some kind of, like, shop guy.
I thought I just had to, you know... I almost
just had to
said
inseminate
sploosh into you, and I was like, that is the worst word I could have ever used.
I moved my sleeping bag into the living room and used two pillows. Wait, why is he sleeping in a sleeping bag? Because he doesn't want to hear the baby crying? Why is this not a joint effort? Wait, two healthy crying babies.
Is she also in the bed?
Oh, yeah. So I think both of the women and their babies are staying at Charlie's house.
Or are they still in the hospital? Did they go home?
They did go home, yeah. And Charlie invited them to stay, which I feel like is overextending when you've just had a baby. Just in my opinion. Maybe don't.
Totally.
Anyway, I moved my sleeping bag into the living room and used two pillows, one to lie on and the other to put over my head to drown out the noise, which continued 24 hours a day. So is he just not doing any of the feedings or diaper changes or...
That sounds like more the woman's job, I'd say.
Oh my God.
A man needs to get his sleep.
You're not going to believe what happens next. My salvation came in an airplane from Salt Lake City when Charlie's mother showed up to help out.
Redemption!
Finally a role for her! Finally a reason he can respect her because she's making life easier for him.
For him, yep.
Never mind all the other times when she made life easier for him.
And, you know, finally fulfilling her role as a woman.
Yeah, this is the one thing she can do.
Now she gets a name.
Well, we'll see about that. We've gone on to... It would be weird if she got a name at this point. Do you know what I mean? I picked her up at the airport and told her that the mothers and children were doing well, which required an explanation about our rodeo clown's wife.
I'm just realizing that it's probably like that situation when you, like, forget someone's name, but you've known them long enough, and it's just too embarrassing to ask at this point. I think that's what Sam did. He just, and Charlie is always like, Mom, so he's like, what is her name?
And, I mean, back when this was written, like, did Control F exist? Like, it was probably hard to go back and edit a book compared to now. I mean, it's just like, it's a literary mess, right?
Yeah. Typewritering that shit.
Okay, you've got to be kidding, she said, like, about the rodeo clown. Which I'm on Charlie's mother's side about that. The cure-all for infirmity of any kind, as far as Charlie's mother was concerned, was clam chowder. Therefore, the minute her feet touched the kitchen floor, she was cooking. During the time Sherry was with us...
Sherry!
No, Sherry's the rodeo clown's wife. Don't get...
The rodeo clown's wife, my new memoir.
She asked several questions about what Mormons believed. Oh, are we doing a fucking conversion scene? Not
Please, God, no.
It was an energizer for Charlie to be able to talk about the gospel with her. After 5 days, her husband, a tall, lean, quiet cowboy, arrived in his dusty pickup to take his wife to stay with his folks in Wyoming until she could travel the circuit with him again. He's a rodeo clown? Charlie's mother asked as we watched them leave. Yes, why? He doesn't look that funny to me.
Ow! Zing.
Charlie's mother stayed with us for a month. Without her, we'd have been in real trouble. We found out that nursing a baby is a full-time job. We found out.
Again, you gotta read the pamphlet. This was all in the pamphlet.
Should have read the fucking pamphlet, dude. And it left Charlie no time to do anything else but sleep during the 3 hours between feedings. But after a month, I was ready for Mum to leave. The reason being that she loved Charlie and Adam as much as I did.
Which is to say, not at all. We have not gotten any indication that you love either of those people. You've not said one positive word about them this whole fucking book.
You haven't said one nice thing about your son. You've just complained about the whole experience. Not one single thing about, like, the miracle of life or how grateful you are that this Heavenly Father's spirit child was sent down to you. None of it. And loving them, she wanted to do things for them, like buying us a colour TV, paying to have Adam's bedroom carpeted, and buying many of his clothes. What a bitch.
A colour TV, yeah, absolute whore coming into my house and putting a government propaganda machine, a colour TV.
It made me furious. That is such an interesting look at like how you respond to people doing nice things for you once again. Like, I feel like he resented Charlie's dad for offering them money. He's resenting Charlie's mum for buying them stuff. And she's just come to help you.
Men... Did we already make the joke that men will literally write the worst book ever written instead of going to therapy?
Men will literally write an 80s Mormon romance novel rather than go to therapy.
And we will read it.
So, I guess... Oh, it made me furious. I guess I still remembered Mark. He was the silent visitor whenever Mum and I talked. By that time, he had already achieved national prominence as a congressional candidate. Well, Mark was really an up-and-comer.
Yeah, what the hell?
He's gotten
He was like gonna buy a little like condo in Utah, and I was like, yeah,
in
no
like
way.
less than a year
In Utah, as a non-Mormon, probably a Democrat. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I bet. We had seen him being interviewed in his race against a crusty old incumbent. Beside him was his plastic-coated, media-perfect wife.
Jack,
again,
enough with the
constantly criticizing women for trying to like meet the standards that you, a member of the patriarchy, have helped to set. She looked like a life-sized clone of a Barbie doll. The whole thing's annoying.
The whole thing's fun.
I hate how much he criticizes women for their looks, and but then also that's the only way that they're like explored as people in these books.
Because everything else they do is annoying.
So it's like you're proving the point that like in the 80s all Mormon men cared about in women was like objectifying them through how they look.
And then blaming them and shaming them for it.
Yeah.
And then glam shaming.
You're glam shaming. Also, isn't every fucking Mormon general authority's wife like that too? Like, we were told that Mark was someone to keep our eyes on. I wondered if Charly had any regrets and was sure that her mother did. A few days later, I gently approached the subject. Mum, I guess you'll be leaving us soon, won't you? I really feel like he hasn't earned the right to call her mum.
Absolutely not.
He openly resents her. I don't know, will I? Yes, I know you need to get back to Salt Lake, but I want you and Dad to know that you're always welcome if you'd ever like to drop in some weekend. I appreciate that. Oh, not at all. Oh, when you go, you might as well take the coffee and whiskey with you. I'm sure we won't be needing them until your next visit, next year. Ew, just like, so passive-aggressive. Yeah. Subtlety is one of my strong suits. She was gone within 48 hours. I'm actually surprised they let her have whiskey in their house.
I know. That's actually pretty surprising.
Coffee, I could see some women hit or miss, but it's like...
Do you think Charly takes a shot once in a while?
She has to. You're not surviving Sam without a shot once in a while.
We haven't been able to do it, that's for sure.
There was an interesting sacrament meeting in our ward a few months after Adam was born. The bishop, concerned about an increasing number of excommunications, spoke in behalf of fidelity. It's not hard to see why someone would think of an affair as being glamorous. After all, she leaves behind her the burdens... Oh, so immediately just framing affairs through the lens of, like, women. Like, she leaves behind her the burdens of housekeeping and children and meets him when she looks beautiful and refreshed. He spends more money on her than he's spent on his wife for years. They meet in some secluded spot where they don't have to face crying children or the burdens of married life. So no awareness of why affairs happen.
It's just a fantasy tangent.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on here. Did Jack's wife have an affair? Like, what's going on?
A fan tangent.
He then went... Oh, that's a good podcast name for you.
Yeah.
He then went on to encourage couples to continue to court each other, to date each other weekly, and to never treat the marriage relationship as drab. It's an interesting idea that the way that you avoid affairs is to, like, cling to each other more, because I actually feel like you can, like, keep the passion alive better if you kind of experience yourself in a variety of contexts, and it's actually healthy for people to, like, you know... have relationships with all types of people.
Totally.
It's like this weird idea that if you like do anything outside your relationship is going to lead to an affair. Like I just think that's like backwards.
Oh, and that's totally like Mormon culture. Like
that's
I remember at BYU Idaho we were going on a trip and there was a male teacher and a female teacher and they were not allowed to be in the car alone together, and he had to like drive like multiple, like at least an hour in one direction, and she was like, this is so stupid. Like, it's fine. We've been on a long road trip.
I would never.
That's what she said. She was like, nothing would ever happen between us. But also, that being said, it is good to, always try to show up as best you can in the relationship. Never take it for granted.
Yeah, but I don't think like a weekly trip to Applebee's is going to be what avoids like staleness in your marriage.
Hey, every marriage in Rexburg is holding on to that Friday
Applebee's is
Applebee's.
keeping every student married couple in Rexburg going. He closed with an interesting idea. Brethren, if you must spend money on a woman, spend it on your wife.
Okay, hang on a second.
Right, and then the next sentence I love even more. If you must have an affair, have it with your own wife. Problem solved. I feel completely unconnected to my spouse because I've been forced to like put our relationship in this weird patriarchal religious box. And so I'm like desperate for connection outside of it. But sure, yeah, I'll just have an affair with the person that I resent the most in the world and like feel kind of fundamentally incompatible with because we got married after like 2 months of knowing each other, sure.
I love having an affair with your wife. It's like when I mix up my like role play roles. I'm like, am I the chimney sweep or the chimney sweep's secretary's baker? I forget. Like,
this is truly like the worst advice. Before you have an affair, just don't do it. It's like everyone has been socially conditioned to believe that having an affair is bad. So like clearly there is a deeper thing going on here than just like, yeah, you just want to spend money on a woman who shows up looking for a friend. It's like, this is not remotely insightful.
It sounds like the worst cross stitch ever made. If you must spend money on a woman, the worst thing you can spend money on, by the way. At least spend it on the one that you own. Mm-hmm. Words to live by. Get a little pillow with that knit.
An interesting concept. One that Charlie and I could enlarge upon.
Enlarge upon?
I really feel like that wasn't an interesting concept. It was just bullshit, but whatever. Hi there. Mind if I sit down? I said to Charlie, meeting her at a cozy restaurant where I had dropped her off 5 minutes earlier. They're doing roleplay. They're doing fucking roleplay. Good for them.
An affair.
Good for them.
On themselves.
Shrugging her shoulders and treating me as a complete stranger, she said, I guess not. I sat across from her in the corner booth. She appeared to be disinterested as she busily studied the menu. You come here often? I asked. No, but since the divorce, I've just had to get away once in a while. That feels a little bit taboo for a Mormon to, like, role-play.
Are they kind of role-playing the situation where she's, like, shunning the burdens of motherhood and marriage in order to appear...
Yeah, are they role-playing an affair?
They are.
Because they both want one?
They are!
This soon?
This is so discouraging.
Oh, you're divorced, I said, my mouth drooping with pity as I reached out to hold her hand. You poor dear. Yes, she sighed. I bet he was a terrible man, I said, full of understanding. A beast, she confided. Yeah, facts. I'm recently widowed, I beamed. Even in his roleplay, he has to be like the virtuous one. He's like, he would never be divorced. I'm recently widowed. Oh, I'm sorry, how recent? I looked at my watch. Very recent. The rule of our game was that we must never laugh. Also the rule of their marriage, If I could make her laugh, then she had to empty the garbage for a week. If she made me laugh, I had to change Adam's diaper when I was home from work for a week. Okay, so we've learned from that he doesn't help out with changing diapers when he's home from work. Great. That recent, she asked, a slight smile creeping forth. Well, to tell you the truth, the funeral was today. This is feeling icky given some of the things I already know about this book. Ooh. I was driving back from the burial and saw this place and thought I'd drop in. Ooh. My wife hated this place and would never have come here with me. This feels like a very unhealthy coping mechanism on the day of your wife's funeral. So I thought, what the heck, I can come here all I want now, right? Then the waitress brought our food. When did they order food? I thought they just sat down, studied the menu, had this little role
Is
play.
he already talking about it kind of like he's glad she's dead? Is that the vibe we're getting?
Kind of, yeah.
So they're just playing themselves?
It is a role play. They're just being silly, Tanner.
Yeah, okay.
They're just playing try not to laugh.
Ha ha ha.
Ha! For a few minutes while we ate, my only tactic was an obvious wink every time she looked up from her plate. Every time she looks up, he just winks at her. She's like, you're right, you got something in there. I could see she was nearly ready to laugh.
Yeah, like 5 years ago.
Sounds very thrilling and very sexually charged. Hey, bucko, she finally asked. You got some kind of eye muscle disease? The word bucko caught me off guard, and I laughed, but then quickly covered it up with a cough. You laughed, she cried. No, it was a cough, I denied, picturing the green mess that we had been finding in Adam's diapers lately, and willing to bear false witness to avoid touching it.
They really cleaned this up for the movie.
Charlie turned to our waitress and got her to agree that it had been a laugh. I was sunk by the word bucko. A little more fantasy chit-chat, a mock proposition, and we headed home to pay the babysitter, clean out the messy diapers left in our absence — I maintained that I was not responsible for them — and allow Charlie enough time to nurse and burp Adam again, giving me enough time to put on a little more moulding around one of our rooms.
Wait, sorry.
Very sexy. It's all paid off.
Did they just do the worst role play I've ever heard to just go home and change diaper? Like, that it wasn't going nowhere? The proposition was, let's go do some molding.
Roleplay doesn't always have to go somewhere sexual to be fun and thrilling.
But it could go somewhere pleasant.
Well, I mean, maybe they're just doing their little tasks that they need to do.
Yeah, their coping
methods. And then
methods.
it's going to be really hot and heavy afterwards. This is all foreplay.
That might be worse for me.
Exactly. What do you want out of this? The house was nearly finished by then. And after all that domestic routine, the fantasy could begin again.
There we go.
He included that section. It's nice to, see the reality of their lives.
You can't just rush off into fantasy adultery sex.
This is just also delusional, but the good part about this mock affair was that it was fun, it strengthened our love for each other, it ensured that neither of us would need to have an actual affair.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah,
yeah, I'm sure.
Also, he spelled insured wrong.
What, they're 9 months into marriage? What?
Just a small detail.
Just a tiny bit.
And it kept us intrigued with each other. The bad part for me is that now, after Charlie is gone, I can never approach another woman in a dating situation without being overwhelmingly haunted by Charlie's memory. Holy shit! Way to throw... We haven't visited the idea of her being dead since the first page.
The very first. And now
And then you've just done this, told us about this weird sexual roleplay affair thing, and suddenly it's like, ooh. That was the rock just thrown on the scene.
Yeah, Jack was like, oh yeah, I forgot that I kill her off. Spoiler alert, shit, God.
He's been narrating as if
he doesn't know what's happening.
Yeah, and then suddenly it's like, oh, this whole time you've
this
been
harbinger, this looming...
I'm feeling uncomfortable. How I wish I had never talked about being widowed. Okay, so what's the moral of that story? Don't role play with your wife?
Or else?
Or don't ever have fun, because I don't know, it just feels like, what was the point of that? I thought
you
it was
manifest it. They did some sex magic
really good.
and manifested that shit. That's why I only do role play of fucking on $1 million. It's like, wow, we're on $1 million.
How's it going for you?
Well, not so good so far, but
patreon.com/self-on-the-shelf. One morning, okay, so we'll just move on from that then, I guess, because it's a new scene now.
Yeah.
One morning in September, the bishop called to tell us that during the night, Celia's little boy had died of pneumonia in the hospital where he had been taken the previous night. I really feel like this, again, I feel like I've brought this up before, but I kind of feel like Jack doesn't know how to escalate stories without people dying.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, why is that the...
Just...
Yeah, it's improv, Michael Scott in an improv class.
Yep.
We went right over...
Remember when we went to that improv class and that literally happened?
We lived it. The first scene we watched people do. Someone got out a gun and shot someone else. We went right over, dropping Adam off with Louise Atkins, the other counsellor in the Relief Society presidency. Louise had a young baby herself, even younger than 3-month-old Adam, but she seemed to be able to handle any extra demands on her energy as a welcome addition to her life, like the perfect woman. Except for the times when she had to go back to Louise's to nurse Adam, Charly stayed with Celia and her husband all day and helped them with the arrangements. The funeral was 2 days later. It was a shock as we entered the chapel to see the tiny white casket with little Billy in it. The bishop spoke about the ancestors who had welcomed Billy back into the spirit world after he died. He promised us that Billy would be exalted in the highest of God's kingdoms. I mean, you don't know that. You don't know what Billy got up to when he was around.
A very wicked baby!
After the benediction, Celia went to the casket, took her little baby, and held him and rocked him in her arms for the last time, tears streaming down her cheeks. The aunts and grandmothers, old and tired women with the mark of pain and sorrow and disappointment etched into their faces, gathered around her and touched her and whispered in their language words of love and comfort. Finally, Celia wrapped her son in a white beaded deerskin blanket and lovingly laid him back in the coffin. The staff from the mortuary efficiently supervised the removal of the body to the hearse. After the graveside service, everyone returned to the cultural hall for a luncheon prepared by the Relief Society. When most of them had finished with their food, Celia went before them. On several tables were nearly all of the earthly belongings of John and Celia. In addition, her mother, Sister Whitehorse, had donated several quilts and shawls for this. One by one, each of the friends and relatives came to Celia and received from her a gift. A shawl, a quilt, beaded moccasins, a crib that had belonged to Billy. When those were gone, John gave away everything else. Wait, why? Oh, a chair, a TV set, their bed, their blankets. They gave away absolutely everything they owned. Why are they doing this? I asked in dismay. It's the Indian way, was all Sister Whitehorse told me. A couple of days later, Charlie and I dropped by their apartment. It was bare. Where is that going? Well, I want to know if it is, maybe I could imagine it potentially being like a Native American tradition to, like, when you lose something, give away everything as kind of like an ego death thing, or like a sort of surrender. Or, yeah, I don't know. I'd be curious to know if that, I mean, I assume that, like, Jack didn't, like, pull that out of thin air, right? He wouldn't just, like, make up, a Mormon white man wouldn't just make up something about Native American culture and history.
No, that would never happen.
So that was kind of a depressing last scene. I assume
a foreshadow of sorts.
Yeah.
A type and shadow.
This book is fucking coming to an end. Also, this whole book, lest we forget, is only 119 pages.
Wow, it's felt so much longer than that.
It's really felt like we've done it for 11 weeks, hasn't it?
Wow. This was his magnum opus. Imagine how Joseph Smith felt when he lost the 116. He's like,
oh my God.
He's
like, that's
Charly.
The whole length of Charly. Which was prophesized about in the 116 pages, no doubt.
Of course.
A mighty writer.
The greatest, yep. A jacked out of the mountain without hands.
Okay, well, I don't really know what to make of that last scene. I suppose they're just trying to show, like, well, what I got from it was, like, Charlie's very loving and, like, shows up for people when they're hurting.
Especially in funeral-type situations.
Yeah, John and Celia. It is really sad that they lost their baby, Billy. Mm-hmm. They are giving everything away. It's the Indian way. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what else to make of that, except for there wasn't one single, like, the contrast of, like, I don't know, these people just, like, lost their son. Mm-hmm. And, like, Sam didn't give, like, we haven't heard one single, like, appreciative, loving, positive word about his son, which I think is an interesting contrast, because it's like, you know, the chapter just highlighted how quickly, I mean, anyone can die at any point, you know, and, like, all we heard was complaints from Sam.
He's gonna have to do a whole lot of processing in very few pages in order to have any kind of redemption whatsoever.
Also, like, the role play thing, I'm like, it's just, the whole chapter felt very off for me, because, like, there's a lot of writing in this book where you're just like, why is that in there? And it just feels like no real thought went into it. You know, you told us the bishop gave this advice to have an affair with your wife, so you did this fun role play, and then, it turns out that was actually really bad, and it was horrible that you did that. Like, I don't know how that really adds to the story. Like, why not have a scene where, like, you had a lot of fun doing role play, and then it, you know, that's going to then contrast when she does die. Like, what a great relationship you had, but why does it just feels weird.
You know, Sam, this is a real slice of life. I know you're in lesser literary works that don't quite fully capture the human predicament, that feel like everything has to be inevitable and drenched in meaning, and every symbol that's put forth by the author ties back somehow. But real life isn't like that.
That's so
Not
true.
everything can be perfectly packaged.
This is kind of like a high maintenance style of writing.
Of writing, it's real life.
Yeah.
Stuff that doesn't make sense, non sequiturs.
Constant non sequiturs. Well, let us know what you guys thought of that chapter. What was your favourite part? Did you learn anything from it? Yeah, let us know your thoughts. I love reading the comments. The day when we put out a Charly video and we get to read the comments is a very good dopamine day for us. as is every time we get a new Patreon. So if you're liking the series, please support us.
Yeah, thank you so much. Wow. I'm still have a little bit of hope that Jack's gonna pull through and teach us some valuable lessons, identify all these harmful behaviors, and not just let him pass by without mention at all. Right?
And if he doesn't, then I think we're gonna have to take on the task ourselves.
Wow. If that's what God wants of us. Okay, bye.
Bye.